When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite, looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Within the gaming world, there are your general gamers, but then there are those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming. If you're one of those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming, we certainly got the place to send you. Scorpion Lair Games. That's right, Scorpion Lair Games is the creators of the true crime hit Killers, the card game. Let's not forget they also have Killers Clothing Company, the profiler game, and things like the 5-Minute Murder channel on YouTube. And we certainly can't forget the new book that is certainly a hit, Beyond the Headliners, True Crimes, Myths, and Legends. Make sure you visit Jeff and the Scorpion Lair Games on Facebook and everywhere today.
Hey guys, it's David A.R. White, and you are listening to Crazy Train Radio. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss it.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this next guest has been a working actor, director, and producer in the LA area for over 20 years. And his next project is out as of today, September 2nd, and that is called A Line of Fire. It's available on all streaming and all that fun stuff. But let's welcome David A.R. White. David, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I can't complain. So I do want to mention that this project has yourself, Cuba Gooding Jr., and Katrina Bowden, as well as appearances from Jason Patrick and Scott Baio. Like I said, it's going to be available on digital as of today. But first and foremost, because I don't want to spoil the project. So what can we start with when it comes to A Line of Fire? How was it prepping for your role? Because you play the guy, Jack Connery, or Cash, as someone who left the FBI to focus on your family. And then you're kind of going back to and pulled back in, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's kind of it. It's like it's a guy who wants to his wife passes. He ends up he has two daughters. He retires from the FBI to with a bunch of honors, and he just wants to raise his daughters, and then all of a sudden his ex-partner is killed, and his niece or her niece ends up calling him out of the blue on this burner phone that he has. So it's kind of like I don't know if you ever saw Night Shift,
Yeah.
or Night Agent. I guess it's called Night Agent on Netflix. Has that same similar start to it. Whereas all of a sudden, he has to decide, is he going to go back in and help her, which means, getting thrust back into all the corruption, the action, the intrigue, and possible the threat on his family or not. And so he obviously decides to go back in and discovers, a lot of stuff going on. So it's a fun action romp that has a bunch of twists and turns and a little bit of romance in it as well.
Well, with all these twists and turns in the project, would you say your character or how should I put this? Yeah, would you say your character would have noticed more corruption and chaos and stuff from that was more than when he was actually in the line of duty, let's say, previously?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it kind of unravels this whole like corruption in the FBI is what he ends up tracking down. So it's way more than he ever had to deal with, when he was actually employed by the FBI. And he comes back into it only to find that there's some not great people that are involved in this, and he's got to sort through all that stuff. So. Yeah, from Cuba Gooding Jr. to Jason Patrick, Scott Baio, they're all like involved in this, in this corruption that takes place.
Absolutely. And we want folks to watch the movie, so I'm not going to spoil. I had an opportunity to watch last night.
All right.
But you had a chance to work with Mr. Scott Baio before in a different project that you've been like I guess you could say the forefront of these films. And these films are faith-based films, such as the series God's Not Dead. And there's multiple in that line. Like I said, you worked with Scott before in this series. So what was it like to reunite with somebody like Scott Baio?
Yeah, I mean Scott's awesome actually. I mean he got a lot of heat on him for some stuff, but like he ends up I just actually became really good friends with him through our kids went to school together. And
Okay.
so I ran into him after my son's game one time, and we ended up hiring him for another movie, and he did just awesome. Like I really didn't know that much about him at that time, and then and became friends. And then when God's Not Dead, In God We Trust came along, he just seemed like the perfect bad guy for that. And so, and then here you go, A Line of Fire. He lives in Florida. We shot in Miami, as well as Los Angeles, and and he kind of wanted to come and play with us. And so, yeah, amazing. This is amazing to me. He said he had never, because he plays an assassin in this movie, and he said he had never used a gun in a movie before. Which, the guy's been around since he's been a star since he was 14 years old. That's astounding to me that that actually, happened. But he was great at it.
Well, since you bring that up, what kind of safety precautions do you guys take? Because obviously there's all kinds of craziness in the world. We're not going to get into that. But even I know there were some concerns in the industry as well. So how did you guys make sure everything you guys came and played, but also we were safe with what we did?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the guys, that are doing our stunts and guns and all that stuff, G-Rod, who also plays in the movie, Gabriel Rodriguez is great in the movie. And then and he was our stunt coordinator. And then Juan Bofil, Both of those guys were, worked on all the Bad Boys. They're really known in the Miami region for all the action movies there. And so, yeah, they were just, they're great wranglers on that kind of stuff. Um, and yeah, we had a pretty safe set for sure. So,
Right
you
on.
check all the guns, you check all that stuff. A lot of them are you use like you're not actually using an actual real gun, that
Yeah,
you put bullets into, so a lot of it's
absolutely.
effects these days. We still have the squibs going off and all that stuff, which is fun, but yeah, you're not actually shooting anything.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I have friends in the stunt world, and sometimes it could be interesting conversations. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But like I said, you have a series like God's Not Dead and all that kind of thing. And
Yep.
would you say because of your growing up in a small Mennonite farming community led you to want to have that kind of product out there as a creator?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was a pastor. And when I came to LA, I was 19 years old and I got on a show called Evening Shade with Burt Reynolds 6 months after I was here. So I had a great, start to my career and was in that for, did TV for 10 years all through my 20s. But in the process of it, we had seen that there was this hole in the marketplace, that there were no faith-based films um, going out there at that point. And so that's when we started, we created a company called PureFlix, and we started to kind of fill that void and make these faith and more family-based movies. Um, and we ran that all the way up until Sony actually purchased our SVOD in 2020. They purchased PureFlix from us, and then we ran that for 3 years with them until they, then it kind of happens is the owners then kind of go off once it's going in the direction, once you kind of see it through. And so that kind of opened up this new venture for me, which is a lot of, like you got two different types of action movies, right? You got the PG-13, you got the Fast and Furiouses, which are fun to watch, but you got cars flying through buildings and, dropping out of the sky, and somehow the guy gets out and he has just a little scratch, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I have a hard time believing that. It takes me completely out of the reality. And then you have the hardcore action movies with, where it's almost more gore. There's so much blood, there's so much language, there's, sometimes the sex and all that other stuff. And so what I'm trying to do is just find that middle ground, to bring over the faith and family audience and still make these action movies that still have a heart, still are gritty, they're and realistic, but without all the language, without a lot of the stuff that we have in the rest of our content. So, and that's what A Line of Fire is. It's like it's a family guy who's raising his two kids, and he gets thrust into the action, and we uncover the bad of the world. No, there's no doubt, but it's a fun action rom that I think you walk away feeling pretty good, and you don't feel like, oh my gosh, I just got slimed and I need to, chill out for days. So,
Well, A Line of Fire was actually written and directed by Matt Shapiro. Excuse me, I hope I'm saying that right. So, what
yeah.
was this the first interaction you had with Matt
No, Matt and
and
I have
putting the
worked.
pro?
Yeah, Matt and I have worked on a lot of movies together, actually. We did a movie called Love on the Rock in Malta in 2020, which was great. We did another one called Finding Love in Quarantine. Those were more family rom-commy action movies. And then we did a movie called Nothing's Impossible. That was just a great, sports drama. So we've worked together a lot over the years, and he's a great friend of mine, and he did a great job on this movie.
So, was that one of those he said, "Hey, dude, I got an idea," or how did that go about bringing you on
Yeah,
board for A
yeah. I
Line of
mean, he
Fire?
he had some time in his schedule, and he started writing this. We hired him, to write it, and then Chris Covell came in and helped write it as well. And they created, something really fun, and it fit in what I was going for as well, from my little bit of a turn here.
Well, obviously, the way we've hinted at it, and I am a I always say this, but it was nice to see it in writing when I'm doing my homework here, that life always imitates art, but art also imitates life. So there's like that kind of middle ground of that makes sense there. So how much would you say that is would you when choosing projects, but also stuff you watch, whether, the connection between life and art interjecting itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, nobody ever asks that question, but it's so true. Life, I find the same thing, because obviously, as an actor, we're trying to, our characters have to imitate who we are in a lot of in our life. Obviously, it's way more fantastic, which is more fun to watch than our life. But for example, like the two daughters that play in the movie are my actual daughters. So
Oh,
I
cool.
I am a divorced dad. So I do raise my children, some in part, sometimes by myself, when my ex isn't there. But yeah, I have, I love my girls and they're great little actresses, and so it's fun to have that element. There's certainly a whole lot of life imitating art in the scenes with me and my daughters, for sure,
Well,
because they're also going into their teenage years, and so you got that fun.
oh yeah. Well, let me ask you this then, because I didn't realize they were your actual daughters. So, how do you separate the work on set and everything else to now you have to put your foot down and as the real father, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. It's tricky because they are your kids, so you have I think SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, more enforces the things that you have to, the kids can only work like 6 hours, and then they have to go home, right? And so as a parent, you'd be like, no, you need to stay until the scene's done or until, so on behalf of the Screen Actors Guild, it's good that they monitor us in that way that, we can't overwork our kids. But yeah, I my girls have been in my movies and my son as well since they were born, since they were little. So it's not really that odd for us. Like I remember my first scene with my middle daughter in the movie when she was a baby. So she was in our movie.
Yeah. Cheap labor. No, no, I'm kidding. Don't call me Screen Actors Guild. I really didn't mean it. I, I know people who work with them. Please do not call. It was a joke. No. But no, that's great that you're able to separate work and play. So, would you say this is would you like to do more roles like playing a retired FBI agent going back in? Because like I said, with God's Not Dead, and one of them, I guess the most recent one that came out, you were running for office. So you
Yeah.
played all these different types of roles. But would this be a role you like, or kind of role you like to revisit?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing action for I've been doing it for quite a while actually. Most people are surprised, but I mean, as far back as I did a movie called Mercy Streets in 2000. So in my late 20s, and there was a bunch of action in that thing. And so all the way through I really actually pioneered trying to bring action movies into the faith space as much as I could in the process of it. And we did a movie called Beckman that's full on action, which a bunch of different ones, but obviously that genre doesn't really call for it as much as I would like. So I've been doing it for years. The Revelation Road, movies, I did three of those action movies, and so it's not really a new space for me. I think that just the difference is more is it's just a little bit more mainstream. Um, that aspect of it. And I'm I have a little bit, the guardrails aren't as high on what I can and can't do. So I'm able to shoot somebody in the head now if I need.
Not really, folks. He did not kill anybody. No. Uh,
In
so
the
you've
movie,
been
of
in the
course,
game.
in the story.
Yes. Yeah, it's a story. There's some people don't fault, and you mentioned about logic earlier. I always quote a director friend of mine. There's logic that we use in real life, then movie logic. So sometimes people can't separate the two. But you've been in the game since 19 and actually even have a book out
Yeah.
as well. So what would you say in all these years that you've been in the game? And he's not old in the slightest, but what's been the biggest change in the entertainment industry that you've noticed?
Hmm. Well, it's interesting. I was discussing this actually. I just wrapped another movie called Straight Shot that'll hopefully be out next year. But it's I was talking to an actor, a friend of mine, and I think life changes in different ways because like when you're in your 20s, for example, right, we're much more like wide-eyed, and the expectations of life are you haven't been through very much in your life at that point, right? And so the expectations of what could be or how it's going to be, and then the older we get, obviously you go through there's the hurts of life, the bumps and the bruises that you go through are they're tough in lots of ways, and so it molds your character, and it toughens you up obviously a lot. But it also makes you a better actor. I do believe that. In the words of the great Burt Reynolds, I remember sitting in his dressing room and asking him, what something about acting. We were talking plays or something at the very end of the end of that show, and he said, and he was going through that divorce with Lonnie Anderson at the time. And I remember him saying, "Well, I'll tell you this: what divorce does do for you is it makes you a better actor." and
Yeah.
and I think that's what life is, and so the changes of Hollywood have been obviously we're in a much more digital age than we ever were, 20 years ago. DVDs and all that stuff are kind of, they're kind of leaving the place, and you got all these streaming platforms that are popping up, and the major networks no longer have the control like they used to. All that stuff's changing, but I also think, the older we get, the more we've been around a lot. We've seen a lot of different variations of it, but at the core, it's all about the story, and it's all about the characters, and it's all about making somebody feel connected to whatever it is, that movie that you're making.
And the story you're telling for good content. And
Yeah.
I don't have time to tell it now, but it was a great story since you mentioned Burt Reynolds. I was talking back in April with Robert England over a cocktail or two, Freddy Krueger,
Yeah.
and he was talking about in his younger days in the 70s working on a project with Burt.
Okay.
And there's just let's just say there's a little funny story with a prop gun going off and Bert's toupee doing one of these, looking like the Stooges, and he thought his career was over. Oh my God, I screwed up. I didn't even know Bert wore a toupee. Yeah, it's a funny ass story, but don't have time to tell that now. But
Ah,
but
all right.
Bert was because you dealt with Bert. Bert was
Yeah.
so generous and like, hey, don't worry about a kid, like put him at ease. But yeah, it's just the way this Robert tells the story is great. But the film is A Line of Fire. It's available today on all digital platforms. David, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hey folks, looking for the ultimate destination for the nerd enthusiasts and collectors? Well, we found the spot for you. Nerds Nest Collectibles is a haven for nerds, geeks, and fans alike, as they have many different products and certainly more to come. Make sure you go ahead and visit them at nerdsnestcollectibles.com. Check them out.
Hey, y'all. This is Adam Marcus. writer and director of Jason Goes to Hell and Secret Santa, and you were taking a ride on Crazy Train Radio. Badass.